Before he became a legend, a name etched into the heart of a nation, he was just a boy from a dirt floor cabin in Kentucky. A boy born on the vast, untamed American frontier, where mist rose over fields at dawn and a small wooden cabin stood alone in the wilderness. His name was Abraham Lincoln, tall, quiet, and with a hunger for knowledge that burned brighter than any hearth fire. He was a child of the frontier, a world of hardship and endless labor. But in that small cabin, under the watchful eyes of his mother baking bread and his father chopping wood, the dream was taking root.
Ho, ho, ho!
You could see it in his eyes as he'd stare out the window, a look filled with a future bigger than the horizon itself. He would devour any book he could find, reading for hours by the flickering firelight, each page turning him into the man he was destined to become. Life was not easy. Poverty was a constant companion, and hardship was the teacher he knew best. He helped his father clear dense forests, worked on neighboring farms, and became famous for his strength, splitting logs with a power that seemed almost mythic. But these struggles didn't break him, they forged him.
Ho, ho, ho!
They carved into his soul a deep compassion, a wry sense of humor, and an unbreakable will that would one day hold a nation together. While others saw only the back-breaking work, young Abe saw opportunities. He helped his neighbors, carried the heaviest tools without complaint, and when the day's labor was done, he would stay up late into the night, poring over borrowed law books, teaching himself the language of justice. He was a self-made man in every sense of the word. Imagine this, a lanky young man, his clothes a bit worn, walking into a grand courtroom.
Ho, ho, ho!
He carries no fancy leather briefcase, just a stack of books tied together with a simple rope. The other lawyers, the judges, the townsfolk, they all stare, some with curiosity, some with doubt. Who was this frontiersman, daring to step into their world? He had no wealth to his name, no powerful connections, and not a day of formal education in a fine university. But what he had was a mind sharpened by relentless study and a spirit defined by unshakable honesty. He taught himself the law, one book at a time, one case at a time.
Ho, ho, ho!
And soon his reputation grew. People discovered that beneath his rustic exterior was a brilliant legal mind and a voice that spoke with clarity and truth. When a judge would call on him, saying, "Mr. Lincoln, you may proceed," a calm would settle over him. He'd stand, look the jury in the eye, and begin with his signature simple power, "Your Honor, let us begin with the truth." And with that truth, he won cases, he won respect, and he became the lawyer everyone trusted.
Ho, ho, ho!
From the courtroom, his stage grew larger. The whispers of his honesty and brilliance turned into a roar that echoed across the prairies of Illinois. He stepped into the chaotic world of politics, and his words struck the nation like lightning. They were honest. They were powerful. They were filled with a profound humanity that resonated with the common person. In an age of fiery, often hateful rhetoric, Lincoln spoke of equality, of unity, and of the fundamental belief that a country could and should be better than its past.
Ho, ho, ho!
The debates were legendary. You could see the fire in his eyes, the sweat on his brow, as he stood before cheering crowds at torchlit rallies. He didn't just speak, he reasoned, he argued, he connected. His opponents would shout back, their faces twisted with anger, but Lincoln met their fury with logic and their division with a call for togetherness. The political storm was brewing, a tempest that threatened to tear the young nation apart, and at its center was this man from a log cabin whose voice was becoming the conscience of America.
Ho, ho, ho!
Then, in 1861, the impossible happened. Abraham Lincoln was elected the 16th President of the United States. As he stood to take the oath of office, snow fell lightly on Washington, a deceptively peaceful scene. But the look on his face was one of profound seriousness, his eyes heavy with the immense responsibility he now shouldered. The nation had chosen its leader. But instead of the peace he so desperately sought, the nation erupted into civil war. The moment was met not with celebration, but with collapse. The drum roll of his inauguration faded into an abrupt, terrifying silence.
Ho, ho, ho!
Maps in the White House seemed to burn as states began to break away, one by one, tearing the fabric of the Union. The sounds of political debate were replaced by the sounds of soldiers marching and cannons firing. The storm had finally broken, and it was a storm of blood and iron. Late at night, in the quiet of the White House, Lincoln would sit alone at his desk, a single candle flickering, its light dancing on the pages of casualty reports. Each name was a weight on his soul, each loss a crack in his heart. In these darkest of days, Lincoln became the leader the nation needed.
Ho, ho, ho!
He was more than a commander-in-chief. He was the nation's anchor in a sea of chaos. He walked through battlefields still thick with the smoke of conflict. He visited hospitals, moving from bed to bed, speaking with wounded soldiers. He would shake their hands, look into their eyes, and often his own eyes would fill with tears. He carried the weight of every soldier, every family, every tear shed across the divided land. And yet, through all the pain and loss, he never gave up. He never lost sight of the profound meaning behind the bloodshed.
Ho, ho, ho!
He believed the war was more than a fight over territory or politics. It was a test of the very soul of America. Could a nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, long endure? In the face of immense pressure, ridicule, and the constant threat of defeat, Lincoln held fast to the belief that it could. Then came the moment that would define his presidency and change history forever. In the quiet of his office, he sat at his desk, a pen trembling ever so slightly in his hand.
Ho, ho, ho!
Before him lay the Emancipation Proclamation. The room was silent, holding its breath. With one signature, Abraham Lincoln declared that millions of enslaved people were, and henceforward shall be, free. It was an act of incredible courage, a defiant stand for humanity in the midst of inhumanity. As his pen touched the paper, it was as if a sacred choir began to sing, a sound of hope rising from the depths of despair. Across the country, the news spread like wildfire.
Ho, ho, ho!
We can only imagine the scenes, enslaved families embracing, crying tears of joy, bells of freedom ringing in towns and cities. It was a promise of a new dawn. After 4 long, brutal years, the war finally ended. The Confederate Army surrendered. The Union was preserved. Soldiers cheered, fireworks lit up the sky, and a wave of relief washed over the nation. But as the celebrations raged, Lincoln stood quietly, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression not of pure joy but of deep thought.
Ho, ho, ho!
He had won the war, freedom had been expanded, but he saw the long, difficult road that lay ahead. The true test was yet to come, healing a broken nation. He knew the wounds were deep, the bitterness was real, and that rebuilding would require as much courage as winning the war itself. He walked the halls of the White House alone, exhausted but filled with a quiet, determined hope for the future. On the night of April 14, 1865, just days after the war's end, the city of Washington was celebrating.
Ho, ho, ho!
A sense of peace had finally returned. At Ford's Theater, the air was warm with laughter and applause. President Lincoln and his wife, Mary, took their seats in the presidential box, seeking a moment of relief, a brief escape into a story on a stage. The soft chatter of the audience filled the air. But then a shadow moved behind the president. A gun was raised. A single, Sharp flash cut through the dim light. And then a sound that echoed into history, followed by complete, haunting silence.
Ho, ho, ho!
As the nation celebrated the peace he had won, a single act of hatred struck down the man who had fought so tirelessly for unity and for freedom. Abraham Lincoln lived a humble life, but he left a legacy as vast as the sky. His image is carved into mountains and memorialized in stone, but his true legacy lives in the heart of the nation he saved. He proved that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and then he rebuilt that house on a foundation of freedom. He saved a nation from tearing itself apart. He fought for the principle that all people deserve liberty.
Ho, ho, ho!
And he showed the world, then and forever, that even the simplest of beginnings can lead to immortal greatness. He was the man who carried a nation. Thank you for watching. If you were inspired by this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more tales of the figures who shaped our world.
Ho, ho, ho!